Thanks, guys. I am here with Wild Turtle. You deserve the applause. Now, going into this week, when everyone was releasing their tier lists, TSM was at the top, FlyQuest somewhere around the bottom or middle. What does taking down TSM today mean to you?
I mean, it feels great. We went into this match, like, I think we went in pretty confident, like, regardless of what happened yesterday. Like, obviously, we pretty much got stomped. And I think today we decided to take a step back and look at what we did wrong yesterday. And I think we were able to fix it overnight. So I'm really happy that my team came through.
What do you think was the defining moment or kind of like the turning point mentally for you guys for today?
I think our preparation was definitely a lot better today than yesterday. We put in a lot more time and work, and we thought about pick ban a lot more than we did the previous day. So I think that really helped us get the win today.
Now, you are the only remaining member from last year's FlyQuest. What can you tell me about this new team?
This new team is pretty quiet, but they're all very nice people. Like Andy, our jungler, and Stunt, they're all very quiet people. So you have to like always try to activate them and talk to them and get them to talk more with you, right? So it's definitely a pretty big change from my last team, which was all English speakers, and they were pretty active as well. So.
Now, what can you tell me about today's bot lane matchup with you and Stunt? You guys were going against a pretty hyped up bot lane.
I think we played pretty poorly in the laning phase. I think we could have definitely played it a lot better than we did. But it is the beginning, and I do have more hopes for me and William or Stunt.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for this interview, and we're going to toss it back to the desk.
Thank you very much, Avli. A huge, huge victory for Wild Turtle and the rest of FlyQuest as they push TSM to their first 0-2 Week 1 in the history of the North American LCS. That in and of itself is huge and something to be celebrated for a roster coming in here in Week 1.
And you have to shout out the fact that they're not even with their intended mid lane starter yet. Fly was not starting this week. They have Keenan from their academy team, so that means they're playing really well. Great performance by them.
Well, you touched on the mid lane. That's where we wanted to put a spotlight focus for this game. I'm going to set some expectations here. Following yesterday's loss for TSM, Bjergsen was the focus of a lot of community criticism. And that's kind of where we decided we wanted to take a microscope to Game 2 here of the week and really look at Bjergsen's play. But before we do that, I want to set the legacy, the expectation of the player in which we are about to analyze. 5-time NALCS champion, 4-time MVP, 4 Worlds appearances, once going to quarterfinals, and 2 MSI appearances. This guy has a legacy unmatched by anyone else.
And I think that last little point you snuck in there about 1 quarterfinals appearance is why people have started criticizing him so much. They're sick of these disappointing international performances. All the domestic domination you can put together after a little while starts getting a little tiring, and especially with him not dominating as hard as he used to in the past, people are starting to get more and more critical.
And I think the criticism after the TL game is there. I can imagine what's going to happen after this FlyQuest game where he looked a lot like a non-factor, and that was kind of the purpose of what we wanted to do here, because people were expecting this dominant NA mid laner, and he hasn't been that yet. So in this particular game, they let Azir through. 4 out of other 6 teams had banned that, so they could play the Xerath. So in some ways it's a counter, but you're choosing to play against Xerath. And we want to set expectations for what the Xerath should do, and now we're going to compare it against Bjergsen's performance in this game.
Matchup chosen by TSM. What do we expect to see out of the Xerath in the laning phase?
Well, generally speaking, even though it's considered a counter matchup, it doesn't come online a little bit later into the game. And the Zac was also picked after the Xerath, which influences how aggressive you want to play this Xerath pick. Now, he got ganked early on, lost his flash, but a really nice play onto Keen stopped him from being at a summoner disadvantage. They trade flashes evenly, which sets Bjergsen up to farm up until he starts becoming that annoying counter pick.
Yeah, and he also opted to go for a Frost Queen, so he got a very good early recall off, but was playing passively pretty much the whole time. And as soon as he gets Lost Chapter, he has the mana spam to get a little bit of deep vision and start invading. And keep in mind, his bottom lane was winning here. So if he's doing the safe play, that would be what you want to do, and he's able to go down and get first blood with the control him and Mike Young had gotten after his Lost Chapter.
So I think what we're saying here is there's nothing you can outright say was wrong. But with the amount of draft resources you put on them, he didn't actually play that far forward. Even after he got online with his mana regen and leveled up Q to start harassing Keen under turret, he rarely started doing that. And then when we move into the team fight phase, it wasn't too much better.
Yeah, and this is where the passiveness comes in. You look at his skill shots, he's hitting them, but instead of stepping back to all with no mana, he can auto someone over the wall to get a large amount of mana back, and now he'd have spells at this point in the game to pick off the low members, Onda and Wild Turtle. So that little bit of killer instinct
late flash
from Bjergsen and he flashes over later to get the auto attack. And then after they lose a fight, you would still see mechanically he's doing a lot of pretty strong things with that Xerath to be able to pick up kills.
Yeah, absolutely shows a mastery of the champion, but the in-game decision-making felt like it was lacking a little bit there. He relied on his bot lane to get the advantage for his team, and then when they move into the team fight phase and FlyQuest starts playing really well, it's really hard for them to continue snowballing through that advantage.
I mean, I'd pay money to have skill shot accuracy like that, you know, for myself in-game, but that's, again, where we kind of return to this question of, okay, you can have mechanical prowess, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have great effect on the outcome of the game.
Yeah, and this is another one of those fights. Keen ended up out-damaging Bjergsen by 2,000 damage in this one. He had to flash away from Ondo. What we haven't touched on much is that Zac is a difficult pick for Xerath to play against. But again, very early going into the ultimate to try and pick up a kill, he mispredicts a few of the Kalista sidesteps, and eventually by the time he's moving in for his closer range skill shots, the fight's over again.
The important thing to point out there is that he had some cooldowns up, so he could have stayed in that fight, throwing those out, holding Qs, and then maybe waiting towards the end of the fight to start shooting those out as well.
But again, 5 ultimates in a row with skill shot accuracy, so it's some things are very strong about this, but other things are not, because he's only making the safe play rather than the aggressive play.
I think what speaks to me there, though, is that so many of those instances where we're seeing mechanical prowess, they're solo kills. They're instances in which he's just barely keeping TSM alive in the game, not necessarily creating an opening for a victory.
And I think that's ultimately what this comes back to, is in that early game, did he have Keen pushed under his turret? Was he harassing him out? Was Mike Young and him comboing together to try and take that turret down early? No, I mean, that turret dropped 25 minutes into the game off the back of a team fight that they won.
Right, because we want to contrast not only the expectations of Bjergsen as a player, but also what is he supposed to be doing with the champion.
Right, you got to be fair to the matchup.
Yeah, and he played Xerath pretty well. But what you expect from Bjergsen, especially against Keen, who is an LCS mid laner who's experienced, but not the intended starter, just is not up to par in this game. He could have played more aggressively in lane. Instead of shoving out, he could have used those spells to poke. He didn't. He was doing the safe thing again and again, and that can be right. I need to be clear, that can be the right play. They were winning after he played that way in the early game.
So I want to wrap this up, though, with a little bit of a discussion then around, like, okay, where did we just land on Bjergsen? At the beginning of the day, you said he definitely does deserve some of the blame for the losses, as does every other member on TSM, but is it, okay, Bjergsen needs to shake off this passivity, and if he just starts playing like he is the best mid laner in the league, he will rise back to that level.
I think that's kind of where we wanted to start going more. I mean, he does have a bot lane that was winning, and it's fine to play safer, make sure you don't die to the Zac, and then let your bot lane carry you, but when things start going off the rails, you now don't have the second point of pressure on the map that could have been winning this entire time. So they could have snowballed much more aggressively if he wanted to play that way.
Yeah, he is not playing as well as he has played in the past. That is for sure.
All right, fair enough. An in-depth look at Bjergsen and the O2 TSM here in Week 1. Coming up next, we've got 100 Thieves facing Counterlogic Gaming. Before we go to break, here's the teaser for the newest champion to receive a rework, Swain, the Noxian Grand General.
I have the vision to see what others cannot. The monsters of today will be the heroes of tomorrow. And by my hand will Noxus rise once more.